In this video, we will investigate carbohydrates. This is chapter 2.8 through 2.11. Carbohydrates are one of the major types of macromolecules or nutrients found in our diet. The function of carbohydrates is to give us a quick source of energy, to store energy short term, or to provide structural support for cells. Carbohydrates are all built of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in different combinations. The monomer of a carbohydrate is a saccharide, which is also known as a sugar. We eat carbohydrates pretty much every day, and they're found in a wide variety of foods, particularly in things like our grains, rice, bread, pastas. Smaller carbohydrates are also sweet, so we find them in things like fruits, vegetables, or other plants. With carbohydrates, the energy is in the chemical bonds, particularly the bonds between carbon and carbon molecules or carbon and hydrogen molecules. Organisms need to break these bonds to release the energy. Usually, our bodies and our cells break the bonds and convert that energy into ATP, which is a cellular battery used to get work done in the cell. We're going to look at two major types of carbohydrates, small carbohydrates and large carbohydrates. Small carbs tend to taste sweet. These are the ones we use as a quick energy source. There are monosaccharides, made of single ring sugars, and disaccharides, made of two sugars put together. Large carbohydrates are obviously large in structure. These are used either for short-term energy storage or for structural support in the cells. Examples are polysaccharides like starch, cellulose, glycogen, and chitin. Monosaccharides are the quickest source of energy. These are broken down quickly by cells to make ATP. Examples of some monosaccharides are things like glucose, galactose, fructose, which is found in fruits, ribose, and deoxyribose. We can see from this diagram that these sugars are often in 6 or 5-point rings. Glucose is the most common sugar. It is often used to build other types of carbohydrates like disaccharides, polysaccharides like starch, glycogen, and even cellulose. When you go to the doctor and they talk to you about your blood sugar levels, they are actually referring to the glucose levels in your blood. When we eat glucose, there are 3 fates or 3 paths that it can follow. Glucose in your blood can be used for energy that is needed right away. So that means our cells break it down immediately, breaking the bonds and turning it into ATP energy. If we did not need the energy right away, say we're resting, or have too much glucose, we can put some of that energy in storage. So there's short-term energy storage, where animals make a compound called glycogen, where they chain together a whole bunch of glucose molecules and store it in the liver or muscles. If we have a huge surplus of glucose, our bodies will take some of that and turn it into long-term energy storage, and those glucose molecules are actually unraveled and converted into fat, which is a type of lipid, a completely different kind of macromolecule. Disaccharides are when we take 2 saccharides or sugars and connect them with a chemical bond. Common types of disaccharides are sucrose, which is table sugar, lactose, which is milk sugar, and maltose. Sucrose is made of a glucose and a fructose molecule stuck together. This is a very common type of disaccharide. Lactose is made of glucose and galactose bonded together. And again, this is found in milk. And maltose is when 2 glucose molecules are bonded together. Polysaccharides are when we have 3 or more saccharides or sugars bonded together. These can be moderately lengthed chains or very, very long chains of sugars. Starch, for example, consists of hundreds of glucose molecules connected together. Remember, there is energy stored in each one of these chemical bonds. So the larger the polysaccharide, the more energy is stored within. Many polysaccharides are used for short-term energy storage. Others are used for structural support. We're going to look at examples of each one. Starch is a polysaccharide found in many plants, particularly in things like potatoes and rice. Starch is made of glucose molecules. These glucose molecules are connected together using chemical bonds. Starch is a long polysaccharide, often made of hundreds of glucose molecules that are in a chain that often coils into a helical-like shape. Glycogen is similar to starch, but it's found in animals. This molecule is also made out of glucose, but it's in a branched form. So instead of long coiled chains like we saw with the starch, this glycogen is long coiled chains with many branches off to the sides. Animals store glycogen in the liver and the muscle cells. Again, this is a molecule used for short-term energy storage. If you have excess glucose in your blood, your liver and your cells will take it up and make glycogen to store that extra energy. Not all long polysaccharides are used for energy. Some are used by cells for structural support. This includes the molecules chitin and cellulose. Because these are structural carbohydrates, they are not digestible by many organisms such as animals. There are only certain creatures, often bacteria, that can actually break down cellulose and chitin. Chitin is a structural carbohydrate that's often found in arthropods, things like insects, crayfish, crabs, lobsters, and other multi-legged jointed organisms. These organisms have hard exoskeletons. The chitin is one of the compounds that makes that exoskeleton so hard and crunchy. Cellulose is a structural carbohydrate found in the cell walls of plants. This carbohydrate is very hard for animals to digest, making it an ideal structural carbohydrate. The reason that animals cannot digest this molecule has to do with its shape. The way that the sugars, which are all glucose by the way, are connected is different than the way that glucose molecules are connected in starch or glycogen. Because of this difference in shape, animal proteins and enzymes cannot digest it. Cellulose helps make plant cell walls strong and sturdy, making them hard to change shape and allowing that plant cell to be protected. Another name for cellulose is fiber. This roughage is often eaten by humans, not for energy, but to help regulate our digestive tracts. Fiber cannot be broken down by our cells. Again, cellulose, or fiber, is shaped differently than starch or glycogen, which means that our enzymes cannot digest it. However, fiber helps move things along our digestive tract and has been shown to help with prevention and reduction of things like colon cancer. Some organisms can break down fiber. Termites and cows, for example, have a mutualistic relationship with bacteria that live in their gut that help them break down this molecule for energy. Most animals cannot do that, though, and fiber passes right through their digestive tract. Here's a quick review question about carbohydrates. Cellulose is nearly identical to starch. However, we cannot digest cellulose. Why is that? Pause the video and take a moment to read through the choices and pick your answer. The answer is that cellulose molecules have a different shape. Remember, digestive enzymes work based on their shape. They have one specific substrate that they can work with. Cellulose is shaped differently than starch and glycogen. This means that cellulose will not fit in the active site of digestive enzymes and cannot be broken down by animals. This video covered the basics of carbohydrates in Chapter 2.8 through 2.11. Be sure to review the learning objectives posted in Blackboard for this lesson.